93, 93, 93. I'm on Asha Renew from AshaRenew.com. We back in here. Okay. Let me actually pause this. Give me a second. Pause this. Hold on. Yeah. Alright, give me a second. Dealing with a whole new setup here. Hopefully the sound is how it's supposed to be now. I've been dealing with a lot of technical difficulties. So I'm using a whole nother piece of software now, which will hopefully clear up all of the mishaps. So I'm just putting in the final details into the live and we'll go right in. So give me a second. Let's see. Just putting in the last details here. So can I be heard clearly? Can y'all hear the music as well as my voice in the background? I just want to know if everything is coming through clearly before we get started. Let's see. Let's see. I appreciate that, Kelly. I see you, Dank Wizard. Sorry, everything is good. All right, cool. Cool. All right. So anyway, I may need to make some minor tweaks along the way. Maybe not. But we should be better than we was. So we at least making progress. So it may not be 100% perfect right now, but we at least making progress. So I just want to put these links to the chat. It would be good. All right. We should be good to go. Let me close this down. All right. Okay. All right. So yeah, hey, completely cut off all my hair. Again, I'm just doing my best to reflect the times. So that's all it is. I'm just doing my best to reflect the times. You know what I mean? We in times of war. So of course, I want to look like have my little warrior spirit going on, little warrior spirit popping off. So I'll basically ego deafen, basically, if we wanted to consider it an element. Ego deafen. That's funny. So yeah, cut off all. We most of the time we identify, with our hair, with our facial hair, For women, it may be makeup styles. We always identify with all these things. So I just removed all of it. Because, I usually don't shave my mustache. So you see the mustache is gone too. So I'm just completely removing myself for even what I'm used to looking at in the mirror. So I'm not even used to looking at this image in the mirror. But we're doing a complete reset. Right? So let me see if I can play this. There we go. See if I can slow it down a bit. Yeah, that sounds more cosmic. Alright. Okay, so everything's looking good. So we'll get started in just a second. Let me just put on something else. Put on some different background music. We're good to go. We get started. So once again, I appreciate the patience. You know, working with all this software can be time consuming. You know, finding the right time to record all these things. Let me see. Yeah, sure. I'll play that. No, I'll play this one. So anyway, I'm going to just be reiterating what's been going on for the past couple days because I haven't been online. You know, trying to fix all these technical difficulties. So I'm going to be going through things that, you know, people may already have been aware of at this time, but I'm just going to update all my listeners so that everybody is abreast to everything that is unfolding. Okay, make sure this is repeating. All right, cool. Let's turn this up a little bit. Oh yeah, I still got it in reverse. So yeah, I'm gonna be playing some very strange music. Why not? To take us into the astral plane, into the trance state, all that good stuff. And that's what all this stuff is. It's like as I upgrade the equipment, it's like I gotta readjust everything. My whole setup has to be readjusted as I add on new pieces. So that's what's been going on. As I add new pieces, I have to rearrange and readjust things. All right, so we should be good to go now. So let me not waste any more time. All right, so in terms of current events, Joe Biden gave his State of the Union address recently. You know, of course, we still have the Russian-Ukraine conflict occurring, and I'm just going to give everybody a lot of details here. Again, I've been taking my notes. I've been keeping track of everything, so all the things that I, you know, pick up on that I feel is, you know, necessary to share, then I will share it. So all day, you know, yesterday, day before, just been gathering information and compiling it, so we should have some good delivery here. All right, so we're 10 minutes in. Let's go ahead. So let me get to these notes here. And I'm just going to go down the list. Because I actually did this video earlier. I actually did a pre-recorded version of this video. But it was just so much background noise. I'm like, it's not even worth putting out. So this is what I mean to be. You know, I'll be going through a lot of shit trying to get these videos out. It'd be crazy. However, you see, I still make the shit happen, irregardless. So we're not even going to get into those details. All right. Let's see. So I have so many notes. So just give me 1 second. All right, here we go. Here we are. So again, just gonna get all this stuff out of the way, then we can talk about some other things. But let me get the more important things out of the way. Okay. Wait, this may not be the one. Hold on. Let's see. Yeah, it's actually, I have so many notes, it's ridiculous. Can you tell me what star system I'm from or what star seed I am? Yeah, I can. Not just by looking at you, of course, but, you know, go through the process. Just email me and let me know that you would like a birth star reading. You know, then we'll talk about it there. So yeah, just send me an email, asha@ashrenew.com. Let me know what you need. And again, that goes for anybody. So even though, you know, it's services that I don't have every single service that I do on my website. I can do all types of stuff. I just haven't put everything up on the website and, you know, give it a nice delivery and all that. So All that is in the works. So like I said, I'm doing all this by myself. So all this technology, all this software, all this hardware, I have to learn how to use it, then update it. So it's like I'm just learning everything as I go. All right. But again, let me go to these notes here. So first and foremost, we had a new moon. So let me start there. No, yeah, we don't have to discuss prices right here in this current form. So yeah, so just email me. I'll let you know the prices. I'll let you know the details. So whatever you need to know, I'll send you the email. So we don't have to talk about all that here. Or we'll just talk about it, after I get through the important stuff. So we'll get to it. My take is Russia ain't playing with the U.S. NATO forces. Yeah, we definitely gonna get into it. Like I said, I got a lot of different notes here that I'm gonna put out into the universe, so we'll be able to make a definite conclusion when it's all said and done. So we had a new moon on. It was yesterday, March 2nd. At around 9:35 a.m. West Coast. So East Coast, it would have been about 12 p.m. So about yesterday around noon East Coast or 9 a.m. West Coast, we had a new moon. And depending on if you adhere to the Western or Eastern astrology, the new moon would have either been in Aquarius or would have been in Pisces. So let's start with the Western. So we start with the Western. The new moon would have been in Pisces. So for the next 2 weeks, all the way to the full moon, which is on the 18th of March at around 12 a.m. So basically the night of the 17th. That will be the full moon. So for these next 2 weeks, we're going to be dealing with the energy of Pisces. And whenever we are dealing with Pisces, we understand that we are dealing with the 12th house of astrology. Whenever we're dealing with the 12th house, we know that we are dealing with, you can say, the beast within, right? This is the most uncomfortable factors of reality or consciousness that we have to face, that we call our psyche or our shadow self, or even our alter ego. So as I was stating earlier about me going through an ego death, that's just me getting in tune with my alter ego. Your alter ego requires you to kill your ego. Your ego becomes the sacrifice. This is essentially the message of the hanged man, because the hanged man represents Neptune. So when you see that hanging man, that represents a self-sacrifice. So the sacrifice isn't an animal. It isn't another human being. It isn't anything else. You are the sacrifice. You have to sacrifice your own consciousness in order to get in tune or tap into your shadow self. So that's why I say, we tend to get attached. We can get attached to the littlest things. Again, like our hair, facial hair, image, makeup, style. We can get attached to all these things. So much so that if it is removed from us, we feel out of place. We feel different. Let a woman cut her hair off. She's going to feel very different, right? Just like a man, when he gets the fresh cut, the fresh line up, he's going to feel a lot more confidence, so on and so forth. So we know very, very little things, has a big effect on our psyche, because again, the 12th house, the unconscious mind, represents your psyche. So very, very little things have a big effect on our psyche. So that's what we must understand about the 12th house, or the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind is susceptible or sensitive to very subtle influence, but it has a major impact. So most of the time when people get into arguments, people get into fights, people get into, just, you can say, letting their emotions take control, as we call karma. This is essentially how karma cleanses itself in our lives. So what starts off as just a regular conversation becomes an argument. Things like that is because these karmic forces are navigating around in our psyche. So it makes us more susceptible to influence, which will release karmic forces like a volcano eruption. So that's really what that's about. Like, it's probably not too many people who woke up in the morning, thought about, okay, I'm about to have a massive argument with my partner or my family, whoever you decide to go off on. It don't really happen like that. It's not really planned, but it remains in the atmosphere. So if you essentially are pushed a little bit, then you're going to feel its influence. And by the time you realize what's happening, you're already in the midst of confrontation. I'm saying all this to say this is how karma expresses itself. And this can be either positive or negative, because I'm just speaking about the negative in arguments. Then on the positive, it can also represent full-blown creativity, full-blown divination, right? Your psychic senses, your psychic abilities are enhanced. So this will also be energies of the 12th house, because the 12th house represents divination, right? So when the new moon is in Pisces, what we must understand about the new moon, which is completely different than the full moon, is a new moon, again, represents the veil. What I mean by the veil is, if the full moon is, you can say Isis or Aset, you know, the high priestess of the tarot, you know, the temple woman, the holy woman, then Neptune or Pisces, or the dark side of the moon, would then represent something like Lilith. So you can say the light side of the moon is Eve. I'm just giving references that, you know, we are all familiar with. We got Eve, then we got Lilith. You got the second wife of Adam, then you got the first wife of Adam. This is the reason why we only see one side of the moon. Just like there is no mention of Lilith in the Bible. The dark side of the moon remains dark, but we also understand that the moon has a magnetic influence on the planet. As we say, the moon influences the tides, but we know the moon influences more than the tides. It also influences people. So people's temperament is also determined by the moon. As we know, our Holy Trinity represents our sun sign, our moon sign, and our ascendant. So most people, as we know, are familiar with their sun sign, but they may not be familiar with their ascendant or moon sign. So as we know, our ascendant will represent more so our personality. Our sun sign would be our personal power or our creativity. But then our moon sign represents more so how we feel on a day-to-day basis. Your sun sign doesn't necessarily reflect how you feel on a day-to-day basis. The sun more so reflects how you feel on a season-to-season basis, because the sun represents solar energy. So the sun goes off of seasons. That's why it's a year. You have one solar return per year. So the sun is more so your overall direction in life, as again, we would like to call goals. Our goals in life, when we set goals, that is solar influence. That is the energies of the sun or your sun sign. So the sun has grand ideals. The sun is thinking on a massive plane. As we think about, you know, our purpose in life, our life purpose, why we here, our mission, you know, whatever we want to call these things, right? However, the moon is the realest thing that we deal with. And what I mean by that is, you have a lunar return 12 times a year, while you have a solar return once a year. So your solar chart is updated once a year, but your lunar chart is updated 12 times a year, or once a month. Because here in the West, we don't really deal too much with the moon. It's more about the sun. We don't really pay too much attention to the moon sign. Again, that's why everybody wants to know their sun sign. You probably have never been asked what your moon sign is, right? But the moon determines, again, how we feel on a day-to-day basis, on a month-to-month basis. So you can say, And again, these are just conclusions that I've came to, just pondering on these things. Because when I ponder, you can say most people strive to be, you can say wealthy or successful and all these things, right? Being able to manifest law of attraction. I will equate all that to solar energy, or the energy of the sun. And what I mean by that is those things are greater ideals. How we see ourselves to be, what we strive to be, our futuristic self, right? But in terms of who we actually are and what we have to deal with every single day, every single hour, that is more closely connected to the moon. So as I said, because here in the West, we are more solar orientated, that's why those type of sciences are more dominant here in the West. So again, this is why we hear more about the law of attraction, manifestation, your life purpose, your mission, your soulmate. Remember, SOUL was SOL before that. So SOL is just another way of saying the sun. So all this is solar magic. And this is why we hear that's just the dominant force, especially when it comes to spirituality. It's mostly solar, right? Again, just look around, right? Most people are speaking about solar magic because these are the type of things that people are more interested in. Because once you start dealing with the moon, things get real mysterious. And this is why a lot of people pay no attention to the moon whatsoever. Because now you're dealing with, again, Lilith instead of Eve. So you can say Eve represents the feminine principle, right? So, Eve is a feminine principle. You can say Adam is a masculine principle, right? So where does Lilith fit into the equation? Why was it necessary for Adam to have, I'm not going to say 2 wives, but why was it necessary? Again, there's a lot of things that I don't even speak about publicly because it's too out of range. It's too out of range, even though you come to these conclusions thinking about these things. But I understand, like, I've said some crazy stuff anyway on this channel. Like things that just was way far out. But it's certain things that I still haven't revealed, and I don't think I will reveal it publicly. For example, instead of me just running my mouth, let me just give you an example of what I'm talking about here. If we study what is called the Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, right? For those who are familiar with Hebrew or the Kabbalah, you know what I'm speaking about. There's a reason why it's 2 Hehs. Yod, He, Vav, He. There's a reason why it's 2 Hehs. What do I mean? The feminine principle can be divided into 2 sections. This is the purpose of lunar energy. The main difference between lunar energy and solar energy is solar energy is a direct current, right? Versus the lunar energy is very mutable. It moves in various directions. Because the moon can move in various directions, this is why we experience the emotions we experience, which are very versatile on the day-to-day. You can go through the full set of emotions in one day. You can go from crying to extremely happy all in a 24-hour period, depending on what type of day you're having. This is the power of the moon. This is the lunar influence. The reason why it's 2 Hehs is exactly what I'm speaking about with the Adam and the Eve, including Lilith. Because once we include Lilith, we get a fuller sense of the real reality. What I mean by the real reality is the feminine principle, once again, can be divided into 2 sections. What do I mean? If we study the anima and the animus, for those who are students of Carl Jung or Carl Jung. He speaks about the anima and the animus. Every man has an anima. Every woman has an animus. There's a difference though. Most men's anima is reflected towards every woman in this life. So if a man thinks, women are just tricksters, just trying to get money out of you, he's not just going to apply that to just women he runs into. That's also going to apply to his family, friends, and pretty much every woman, right? Because we tend to be more universal in our conclusions. It tends to be a universal reflection. Whatever our ideal of women are, it depends, but whatever that ideal is, it's reflected on most women. This is the purpose of working with your anima. Because the better relationship you develop with your anima or your animus for women, it bleeds out into the entirety of the world. So as you develop a bond with your anima or animus, it will be reflected in your actual relationships with women or men if you are a woman. But as we speak about the animus, which applies to women, it's not universal like that. So women can have multiple versions of animus, right? And this is why women are more complex, because they are based upon the lunar currency. So they are very mutable. It's not a singular direction. It's not just one current moving in one direction. It's very changeable. And this is because women are more influenced or sensitive to the influence of the moon, just because they are the feminine principle. So because you are the feminine principle, you are just automatically more acceptable to lunar waves than solar waves. And if you are masculine or a man, you're just more in tune with the solar rays than the lunar waves. And again, I don't want to keep it directly on sex, because this goes beyond sex. You can be a woman, into the solar rays, or a man into the lunar waves, which is kind of the purpose anyway, to embody the opposite. That's the purpose of working with your anima or animus. Just like every man has a dream woman, every woman has a dream man. That represents your anima or your animus. So because a woman's animus is very versatile, it's not singular. This is why, again, women are susceptible to the lunar currency. And when you are more susceptible to the lunar currency, you can say your moon sign, because this is where we started it off at, your moon sign becomes more important than your sun sign. Because your moon sign is reflecting your day-to-day transitions, your month-to-month transitions. So this goes beyond, just women having a period, for example, every month. This goes beyond that. Because they have to cleanse, just like the moon has to cleanse. That's why the moon is constantly in motion, going from full to new. The moon is always purifying itself, and we are always feeling its influences as it cleanses and purifies its consciousness. Because depending on the state of the moon, it will determine the state of the anima or the animus, which is mutable. This is what I mean. It's not stagnant. So a man's animus is not stagnant. She may change next month. She may be different next month. Because that is the energy of the lunar currency. Going back to my original point, why I said I don't reveal everything, even though I come to very strange conclusions. And I'm just giving you an example of a very strange conclusion. Because we are here in the West, we are more susceptible to soulmates and twin flames and that whole science, right? Again, this is solar energy. But in the East, as we see, they're more open to multiple wives and multiple husbands. That soulmate energy and twin flame energy is not as dominant there. They're not really thinking about, okay, just one person. There's one magical person for me, because again, that is solar based. They're more lunar based. So they're more open to multiple people being involved in the situations and the relations. Not because some people agree with it and some people don't. It's just the environment. Just like here in the West, you may not be religious whatsoever, but you still may believe in soulmates and twin flames, because that's just the energy here in the West. So it goes beyond religion. It goes beyond a belief system. It represents the grid that we walk upon. Meaning you change every time you change location. You're not the same person when you're on the East, when you come to the West, or when you go to the South, or when you go to the Midwest. You're not the same person. Remember, we are all 360 degrees of the zodiac. So depending on your location, you're going to activate certain chambers, depending on where you are on the grid. This is why the whole science of astrology, this is why your location, where you was born, is important. That's why, your astrology, not only is it the time that's important, but also the location, because the location lets you know where you fall on the grid and which one of those 360 degrees or 360 chambers will be active. So going back to it, I'm saying all this to say it. When we hear things like the wife and the mistress, most of the time, this is not the same person. What do I mean? We all understand we have a light side, we have a dark side. So when you're dealing with the wife, for example, you're dealing with your light side. What do I mean? You're trying to be the best version of yourself amongst your wife or amongst your husband, right? They should bring out the best of you. They should bring out, you can say, your angelic side, more so than the demonic side. Things may get demonic in the bedroom or whatever, but this person is mainly to help you to cultivate, you can say, your angelic form, your higher self, your superconscious. This is why marriage is half of your deen in Islam. In Islam, half of your deen, or basically half of your obligations to Allah, is marriage. So that's essentially 50% of your deen is marriage. So that's 50% of everything is just marriage. Everything else is just personal. So 50% is just being with another person, merged, or multiple partners. So if we're talking about the mistress, or we can say the side chick or the side dude, this is a reality that people just don't want to deal with. What do I mean? People don't just have side pieces just because they just want to. This is not a personal decision being made. Like, because we put all type of titles on people. Some people are just cheaters. Some people just don't know how to be in relationships. This has nothing to do with anything. This is closer to human nature. And again, this is what we see when we study the Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. This is why we see two Heys. We see two Heys because the person that cultivates your angelic side, most of the time, is not the same person that cultivates your demonic side. Most of the time, this is not the same person. Can this be the same person? Yes, but most of the time, it is not. So can you meet a perfect person that cultivates the light and the dark? Sure, but most people don't. So if you do, hands up to you. But this is not the norm. So just understand that. You just may be in an extraordinary situation. But when it comes to the majority of the people, this is not the same person. The same person to cultivate the light is not the same person to cultivate the dark. And what I mean the dark, I'm going beyond just the bedroom and just the sexual, just perversions or whatever people are into, fetishes. I'm going way beyond that. What I mean by cultivating the dark is cultivating your shadow self, cultivating your alter ego. The wife or the husband helps you to cultivate your image or your ego, while the alter ego is cultivated by the side piece. And again, when I say side piece, I don't mean that in disrespect, because obviously this person is highly honored. They are part of the Yo Hey Vav Hey, so it's not there that they're any less important. So I don't want to say that as if these people are lesser, because they actually keep things going. If it wasn't for the mistress or the hidden dude somewhere, then the world would be crazy. Just know that. This is what we learn when we study the arts of prostitution and the such. Men don't get down with prostitutes because they're just, dirty fucks. This is to cultivate the dark side. This is to cultivate the shadow self. And you need a shadow being to cultivate your dark side. You need someone in the shadows to cultivate your shadows. You're not going to ask an angel to cultivate your shadows. That's not their duty. That's not their job. And vice versa. You're not going to ask a demon for angelic interference. It's not their duty. It's not their job. So everybody has their place. Everybody has their purpose. And the more we understand that place and that purpose is based on your location. Again, because we're here in the West, we have a certain view of how relationships should go, how relationships should be, how life is. Again, we have a whole perspective based upon solar magic, based upon solar influence, because the sun is more dominant over here. So this is why we see the main differences between the East and the West, or as we say, Christianity and Islam. In Christianity, it's just one husband and one wife. In Islam, there's multiple wives. The main difference is Islam is a Eastern religion, whereas Christianity is a Western religion. Not to say that Islam is not in the West, not to say that Christianity is not in the East. But if we look at where they were created on the grid, they will always carry that signature. Taking it a step further, because again, I'm just doing my best to break down these things in the nicest way possible. Again, without making anyone feeling like their position is lesser or greater, because we're going beyond lesser or greater. We have to deal with mathematics and science. And if we're dealing with mathematics and science, we must understand that, again, the same person to cultivate your angelic side is not the same person to cultivate your demonic side. And if that is the same person, it is not because they just was that person. They had to become that person. There's not just a person already pre-made to do that. What do I mean? Meaning, I guess when people believe in soulmates and twin flames, they think this person already exists, is already out there, and y'all are just waiting to bump into each other. If we're talking about cultivating the light in the dark, this person is not pre-made. That has to be developed, because they have to learn your light and learn your dark and what they need to do to cultivate them both. So that becomes a process. And a lot of times most people don't know how to balance the two, because their preference is either on the light or dark. Even a person on the dark, that's just their preference. It ain't that they made a decision. It's not that they can't cultivate your angelic side. They're just more comfortable in the shadows, in the dark, because that's where they found their power. So a prostitute, for example, male or female, because again, I don't want to make it about gender, they found their light or their power in the shadows, in the dark. They didn't find their fullness by being married to someone, to be within someone else's image, or someone becomes a part of their image. That's not where they found their happiness. They found their happiness, you can say, being more independent, being more of a soul journeyer, someone who is more about, you can say, self, so that you don't have, you can say, obligations to a family and all these extra things. Everybody doesn't desire that. Again, everybody isn't angelic. If you're more angelic, then you will have those desires. Family, marriage, education, and just, generational wealth. Those are your aspirations. Not because you said so, not because you made the decision. That's just how you are. I'm not going to say how you were created, how you chose to be before you had a physical shell. So when it comes to reality, everybody serves a purpose, as we know. So even the darkest of the dark or the lightest of the light, they all serve a position. So this is when we go beyond the whole idea of heaven and hell. Because if everybody serves a purpose, even the people that are so-called in hell or sinners, they still serve a purpose. They're not just there because they made a bad decision or they made the wrong decision. They actually made the right decision. Because as dark as it may be, it keeps the light under control, especially in these times. And that's why I'm going into all this, because in these times, the dark dominates the light. That's why we have war. That's why we have conflict. That's why we have so many disagreements. That's why we have so many things that are separating and choosing sides. Again, we see this all the way from rap to the global scale. Everybody has to essentially choose a side. Either you're angelic or you're demonic. There's very few people that are walking in that in-between space or that gray space. Very few people walking in the gray space because it's not an easy thing to do, as we call it, to remain neutral. There's very few people that are just neutral. Everybody has their preferences. So you will have to be neutral. What do I mean? This is a true representation of what it means to be androgynous. To be androgynous doesn't mean that you're just feminine and masculine in nature. Feminine and masculine means you walk in between the gray matter, or you walk in between those gray spaces. You remain neutral while the world chooses sides. So while the world chooses either Russia or Ukraine, for an example, just tying in the current events, you remain neutral. Not because you want to, not because it's the best thing to do, but because it is absolutely necessary. If you are about spiritual development, you must use this as an opportunity to develop your spirit. What do I mean? Whenever we have people showing courage to the point where they're willing to die, which we see, we have people with so much courage that they're willing to put it all on the line. They know that they are sacrificing their long life for a shorter life, but they do so because they feel it is worth it. So instead of living to 70, 80, 90, or 100, they may only make it to 18 because they decided to be a warrior and they decided to die for a cause. They decided to make it to heaven quicker than a sinner, you can say. And that's why they are the best of us, the ones who have the most courage. And that is the energy of Mars. Mars, as we know, is our solar plexus, if we're dealing with the chakra system. And the solar plexus is your inner sun. So we have an inner sun. That inner sun is the solar plexus. Why? Because your solar plexus is connected to your central nervous system, as well as your sympathetic nervous system, if we want to be technical and scientific. So you can say your solar plexus is the powerhouse of your body, because it's your solar plexus or your adrenaline glands. There we go, adrenaline glands. That is why, because if adrenaline goes into your bloodstream, it changes you. Meaning you get stronger, you get faster, you don't feel any pain. Like if you are in fear of your life, you're just in animal mode. You're in beast mode, as they call, right? You're just trying to survive. You're in just straight beast mode. It is through the solar plexus that we astral travel. And I know this because I figured it out. Nobody told me. I had to figure it out on my own. So for the people who feel like they don't astral travel enough or they don't dream enough, it is due to the solar plexus or the energy of Mars. Your vitality must be increased. But this is not the vitality of Aries, because remember, the original energy of Mars rules over Aries and Scorpio before the discovery of Pluto. So before the discovery of Pluto, Mars was twofold. So Mars not only represented the warrior that we call Aries, the god of war, Mars also ruled over Scorpio, which is the 8th house, which represents your sexuality. So what does Mars have to do with your sexuality? What does this have to do with anything? Well, the more we study the 8th house, the 8th house is the house of mysticism. What do I mean? So it's not sexuality like we think it is, meaning male or female. And this is the whole thing about, transgenders and all that. This is really the mysteries of the 8th house. The reason why the LGBTQ plus community, all these types of individuals, they are really the mysteries of the 8th house. What do I mean? Because they are letting it be known that things are not as clear cut as we once may thought it was. What do I mean? For the longest, we have come under the influence of either people who are straight or gay, right? And I guess people can be bisexual as well. But for the most part, you're either straight or gay. However, it's not that simple. We have simplified it because we don't understand it. And this is what we did for every goddamn thing in the West. Let's just be honest. We have simplified everything, right? You're either with God or you're with the devil. You're either a man or you're either a woman. We have you're either black or white, right? We have simplified things to the point where we become absolutists. Everything is absolute. It's either this or that. We don't make too much room for the gray area. So that's what we are being forced to deal with, that gray area. And that gray area represents the 8th house, as Scorpio represents the energy of death. So from war, we get death. War is Aries, death is Scorpio. From war, we get death. But from death, we get new life. And that is the sacrifice of death. Death brings forth new life. People die so that we can continue on. Because if people don't die, then there is no continuation. There is no progress. So when we look at it like that, people must die in order for you to progress, in order for you to remain free, in order for you to remain in a position where you can get up and get your money, go to your job, take care of your family. In order for you to be able to do these things, someone has to give their life or be willing to put their life on the line in order to preserve your liberties. Not because they know you, not because they care about you, not because they have any personal attachments to you, because they have an ideal. The ideal is people should be able to do or be whoever they choose to be, which is an accurate statement. But things are a lot more complex. We have the basis of things, right? We have the basis of what it means to be righteous. We have the basis of what it means to be civilized. But when we begin to dig deeper and deeper into these principles, they're not as simple as we once may thought. For example, we all know about the 7 universal laws, and the first law being all is mental, or the law of mentalism. The law of mentalism is a summary of the first law, meaning 100% is mind. Mind is 100%, not 75%, not 50%, not 30%, 100%. Now you can say we've all heard that before. We all have a basic understanding of what that is trying to convey. But obviously the true principle is deeper than that. If we think all we have to do is pick up a book and know the secrets of the universe, we're greatly mistaken. Yes, anybody can read the 7 universal laws, right? Or the Kabbalion. It comes from the Kabbalion. Anyone can pick up the Kabbalion and read. But they're just journeying on the surface of things. It's really just to introduce you to the real mysteries. It's just to get you through the door. But it doesn't explain what you see behind the door. It just gives you a direction to go in. If you can get what I'm saying here. True spirituality is not found in books. Books just point us in a direction, but it doesn't necessarily describe what you're going to experience, as everyone has their own personal journey. You don't know what you're going to experience when you walk through that door. Even if somebody else tells you their experience, that doesn't mean that that's going to reflect your experience. The only way for you to have an experience is to go through the door. And this is what the occult does. It's just to get us through the door. It's not to necessarily explain to us what we're going to see after the fact. And this is why the mysteries of death are so mysterious. Because we can study death as much as we want, but it ain't till you actually die that you understand it. You have to actually go through it. You have to actually walk through the door and be like, oh, damn, I see what was going on here. That's most of the time how you feel. Like, oh, I get it now. Some things take you to die to understand. What do I mean? Because after your heart stops pumping, there's still about 30 seconds of brain activity. It could be less, it could be more, depending on who you are. So a person may very well be dead because their heart has stopped pumping blood. But that doesn't mean that they're dead. They're still going through those hallucinations. They're hallucinating. Because we know at death, you produce DMT. So that means you are going through hallucinations for 30 seconds. Which, when people say your life flashes, before your death, well, you have 30 seconds of, I'm not going to say invisible, but timeless brain activity. 30 seconds to a dead person is infinity, because you are no longer bound by the limitations of time. And this goes to Scorpio. Scorpio teaches us the mysteries behind those doors of death that we all fear. So when it comes to something like transsexualism, this represents death, because it leads to transformation. If you have a body of a male but you feel like a woman, you have to go through a death to come into acceptance of the woman within. Right? You have to realize, oh, okay. Again, it's a process, right? This is the mysteries of the 8th house. Again, we may not want to deal with it. We may think it's, kind of strange. But that's why the outer planet is Pluto. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto currently, and Pluto is an outer planet. Whenever we're dealing with these outer planets, that's why I'm always speaking about these outer planets. Because the outer planets introduces us to the strangeness of life. The strangeness of life happens once we go beyond the boundaries or limitations of Saturn. Once we go beyond the boundaries and limitations of Saturn, we enter into Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, which is where all the strangeness occurs. The most strangest of strange is Uranus. Uranus is complete strangeness. So essentially everything you thought you knew before Uranus, you have to reconsider. This is why most people want to stay within the bounds of the matrix or Saturn. Most people are comfortable within the bounds of Saturn because you're comfortable. Because the invisible influences of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, you can say you can pretend to ignore them even though they're going to hit you in the face. And again, that's why Neptune represents karma. We can ignore karma, but it's going to catch up to you eventually. When we're speaking about Uranus, this is your higher self. Eventually, that's going to catch up to you. Eventually, you're going to have a calling within, whether it's a midlife crisis. We know whether it's you like, damn, I really am here to do something. Let me go ahead and get on my job. You're going to go through that. You're not going to escape that. No one escapes. Everyone has to go through the veils or the doors of death. But even before you get to death or Pluto, you will, as they say, many are called, but few are chosen. That's Uranus. The call, the spiritual call as we call it, that's Uranus. So when you got the call to wake your ass up, that's Uranus. Damn, that's strange. You start to come in contact with information that was very strange to you at first. It was very strange. All new age information was very strange in the beginning because it's like this is completely different than everything that we've been taught to that point. Because we were never taken outside of the boundaries of Saturn. Because we were never taken beyond the boundaries of Saturn. Anything beyond those boundaries is very strange. It's almost as if we can push it off as if it's not real. This is what people do with astrology. Astrology is Uranus. People push it off. Oh, that ain't real. That's because it's outside of your boundaries of understanding. Until you make the decision to understand it. And that's why it's a personal journey. You have to make the decision to accept it. So Uranus, the decision that you must face is, okay, well, this is actually real. Astrology, astronomy, all these things that I kind of play around with is realer than I realized. Then you get into Neptune, which is the mystery of drugs, the mysteries of Shiva. Again, you're not going to just find this stuff anywhere, but it's there. Shiva, the god Shiva, the Hindu god, was a drug addict. This is the original story. What we will call a drug addict in the 21st century, what we would deem a drug addict in the 21st century, that's what Shiva was. Because Shiva was all about psychedelics, doing psychedelics in order to reach nirvana. So all this meditation that we see, everybody thinking they're meditating, they're reaching nirvana, they're going into higher states of consciousness. Well, the original culture required you to be under the influence of psychedelics to reach those states. So when we look out into the world and we look at all these people trying to meditate, trying to reach these deeper states of consciousness, they're trying to do it. They're trying to do something clean that was originally dirty. That's what that is. So as dirty as we consider drugs to be, for example, it's those same drugs that we even know who Shiva is, that we even know who the gods are. Somebody was doing some drugs. Where do you think all this knowledge and information comes from? Somebody was high. That's why Uranus is the superconscious. Uranus takes you higher. But again, even though Neptune represents drugs, where you're trying to get to with the drugs is Uranus, which is your higher self, your angelic self. But in order to get into your angelic self, you have to meet your darkness or your shadow side. That's Neptune. Neptune takes you to your lowest depths, while Uranus takes you to the heights of your depth. Not heights of your depth, I'm saying that weird. Neptune takes you to the infernal plane. Christ after death. After Christ was hung on the cross, he had to go through the inferno before he was resurrected. So before Christ was resurrected, he descended. That descension is Neptune. Then when you ascend, that's Uranus. So then what purpose does Pluto serve? As Pluto represents the Lord of the underworld. Pluto means you're going into a whole nother reality. You don't come back to this plane. These are the veils or doors of Pluto. Pluto allows you to create your own universe. Pluto takes you to, and I know that popping, let me back up a little bit off the mic. Pluto takes you to, you can say your godhood. We just keep it simple. Anybody may feel like they are the god of their reality, but Pluto allowed you to know it as a fact, because you're no longer dealing with illusions. See, it's one thing to call yourself a divine being within Maya or within the Matrix. Now, Pluto says, can you call yourself a god, a goddess outside of the Matrix? See, most people have no consciousness outside of the Matrix. Just think about it. They have no bearing of reality outside of the Matrix. That's why they invest themselves completely into the Matrix. So it's easy to call yourself God when you say, when you're successful, when you're doing good for yourself. It's easy to feel like you're blessed because you have mastered the Matrix. But this is not the goal. Because again, Saturn is the limitations of the true reality. So if Saturn is the limitations of the true reality, being the master of the Matrix is really the beginning instead of the end. What most people look at as the end is really the beginning. That's the reality. What most people look at as the end game, to be financially free and all, whatever people want. That's most people's end game. That's what they spend their whole life striving after, trying to achieve. And by the time they achieve it, again, they're almost ready to check up out of here. But they never cross beyond the veils of Saturn. And this is my point. You can spend the entirety of your life without ever crossing past the boundaries of Saturn. Because Saturn also represents soberness. So if Neptune represents drugs, then soberness is Saturn. So the fact that you have to pass a drug test to even get into certain jobs, into certain places, that's Saturn. That is the Matrix. That is the architect. So to enter into certain realms, you have to be sober, right? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Some people are operating heavy machinery. Everybody shouldn't be, high out of their mind, doing things that are essential services. That's why I said everyone serves their position. Everyone serves their purpose. Some people are meant to remain sober and they are completely fulfilled with that. But then we have people, once you go beyond the boundaries of Saturn, you're no longer just fulfilled with the soberness of reality, because you understand that things go beyond. This is not the end game. This is the beginning. Me mastering my physicality is only the beginning into the outer planets. Because now I must master who I really am. I must master my highness, my lowness. I'm saying these words crazy. I need to master my highness, my lowness, And then that's what allows me to exist completely independent of what we will call God. Because if you are truly a god or a goddess, that means you can exist independent of the creator, as we call the demiurge, because the demiurge is not your creator. It's just the creator of the physical world, but the physical world is not the destination, according to Gnosticism. So to reach your own divinity, you have to separate yourself from the demiurge that most people consider God. What most people consider God is really the demiurge. It's really a lesser being. So Pluto reintroduces you to what we call the true God, which is found within you, which is separate than the demiurge. So in order to stop reincarnation, again, see, now we're going into deeper mysteries. In order for you to stop reincarnating, you must separate yourself from the demiurge. That's what keeps people reincarnating. You have not separated from the demiurge, or you have not gone beyond the boundaries of Saturn. Because the mysteries of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are very strange. If you're completely comfortable with the soberness of Saturn, with the structure of Saturn, with the stability of Saturn, and this is what most people want anyway. Most people want what? Structure, stability, soberness, family, marriage. That's all Saturn. So you can say that's what most people strive towards, because again, the 7 inner planets, or the 7 chakras, that's why I say from the crown down. From the crown down means that your destination is to be the master of this earth. If you start at the root and make yourself towards the sun, you arrive at the same thing that I'm talking about now, or earlier. The destination is not to be solar charged. We're already there. We're already in the West. We're already charged with the solar. Again, if you're into anything new age, you're already solar charged. That's not the destination. So if you start at the crown or the sun, you acknowledge what you already know. I'm already a solar being. I'm trying to figure out how to go beyond Saturn. My destination is not the sun. My destination is Pluto. You see how that works? So while the world's destination is Saturn, because Saturn represents the world stage, and that's most people's goal, that's their destination. Or Jupiter, because Jupiter represents the law. So everybody who's trying to be, let's just say, a doctor and a lawyer, that's Saturn and Jupiter. Those are inner planets. And we see that is most people's goals. It is within the physical world, within the matrix, as if nothing else exists beyond it. Right? That's the illusion that's cast over our eyes. They could care less if you become a doctor or a lawyer, because you're still within the matrix. They can care less how much money you make, because you're still in the matrix. You're still going to reincarnate. You're still susceptible to the influence of the demiurge. So they can care less, because as long as your energy is invested into this system, then you're still under the influence of Saturn. And that's why Saturn represents what it means to be bound. Because again, Saturn is what? Separation. Saturn is boundness, to be bound. Right? To have ties. That's why religion means to be bound or tied. So we begin to see that, and I know I haven't even spoken about politics, but all this is combined, because if we want to understand the world stage, we have to understand the outer planets first, not second. Most people are trying to understand the outer planets after the fact, whereas I'm telling you to start at Pluto and make your way to the sun. Don't start at the sun and make your way to Pluto. That's what everybody else is doing. If you start at Pluto, that means the first level that you go through is resurrection, because Pluto represents resurrection. So that means the very first principle for you to master is I must reincarnate. I must resurrect myself from the dead. I'm dead. I need to become alive. I need to resurrect from deadness. Versus if you start at the sun, okay, I need to cultivate my personal power. I need to cultivate my creativity. Is that not how most people are thinking anyway? Is this not the consciousness of the masses anyway? They're all about their own creativity, personal power, and their ability to procreate. This is all solar magic. But when we begin to talk about lunar magic, sorcery, and necromancy, now we ain't even trying to have those types of conversations. Because that's considered forbidden. That's considered demonic. That's considered black magic. But there's truly no such thing as black magic. That's more so a derogatory term of reality. Because what we deem black magic is just darker magic, as we call folk magic. It's just magic that goes beyond the matrix. Magic that they don't understand. Magic that the world doesn't understand. That's what true black magic is. Magic that the world doesn't grasp or understand. It's as simple as that. Because you're dealing with sorcery and necromancy. So if you coming back with information that nobody knows, you probably been talking to the dead. If you're able to become successful in this world, it's because you mastered sorcery. You know how to put your energy into your products. You ain't just selling stuff like a capitalist. Saturn. People trying to be capitalist. Saturn. You're not a capitalist. You know how to put your energy into your products, meaning people feel you. People can feel your essence way beyond being in your presence. That's sorcery. But we see that these type of things are not mentioned on the world stage whatsoever. You're not going to have a conversation about necromancy or sorcery. It's just not going to happen. Because again, everybody serves their purpose. Everybody has their position. So because if you're into any of these things, that means your position is outside of the limitations of Saturn. Because if it wasn't, then you wouldn't be concerned with these matters at all right now. So I just want to give these are just some thoughts I have anyway. These are thoughts I have anyway. So even though I may not share every single thing, because again, when you're dealing with the outer planets, information that comes to you isn't necessarily what you were expecting. When I started my spiritual journey with this, I wasn't expecting any of this. I didn't know that I had to travel into the infernal planes to resurrect myself from the dead. That ain't necessarily what I signed up for, but that's what had to occur. That is what has to continuously occur as we start from Pluto. Because if we start at Pluto, by the time we get to Saturn, by the time we get into the matrix, we have mastered 3 principles if we are starting in reverse. That's why I be playing the music in reverse. Let me put this shit in reverse right now. So the reason why they don't like you listening to reverse music, and they are like, again, you can type it in right now. Backwards music is devil worship and satanic. There's all type of that shit everywhere. No one's going to tell you the reality of that. Because why would they want you to know? Because most of the people who speak like that are religious. So just understand that most people that talk about satanic stuff and demonic stuff, they're religious. They're trying to veer you away from that stuff. They're not trying to bring you in. So most people you can say who are into demonology, for example, they're not into demonology because that's just what their preference is. That's because they're trying to steer people away from it. So meaning that it's Christianized. And I guarantee you, most people just look at this. Don't take my word for it. Just look around YouTube. Look around the internet. Most people that's talking about darker things is not to to put you deeper into the mysteries. It's to veer you away from them. It's for you to turn the other cheek. It's not for you to go deeper into it. And then the people that do recommend you to go deeper into it, it tends to be a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to say a bunch of stuff. That's not giving enough information. It tends to be wrapped around too much darkness for people to understand it. It tends to be too much extra shit going on for people to truly grasp what's really going on. It becomes a veil. So even if you think you're studying some satanic, some Luciferian stuff, it's like it's still too much extra shit for you to really grasp what's going on. Because these people may be Satanists or Luciferians and all that, so they got all this extra shit with their science. It ain't just pure mathematics and science. It's all this extra shit. So even the people that you think is trying to take you deeper, it's still limited. Because we don't have to mention Satan or any of these things. We don't have to mention Satan or Lucifer if we're talking about having an ego death. If we're talking about resurrecting from the grave, we don't have to mention these things whatsoever, because this is just a part of the human process. This is what it means to be human. This is why we're not animals. The difference between us being animals and humans is because we have a godly soul. We can cultivate our godly soul and escape the matrix. Animals can't. All this other stuff that we see on Earth, they ain't escaping this matrix. They're perfectly fine here. It is only us that's dissatisfied here because we know, like, this is not the end goal. Right? We strive for something higher. Again, not everybody, those who go beyond the matrix, or who desire to go beyond the matrix, they're not going to be satisfied with this world. That's why it's easy for them to master it. So if you're spiritual, it's easier for you to master the world than somebody who's completely dedicated to this world, because you don't have the same attachments that they do. That's why when you start from Pluto, when you do come into this world, when you do enter into the world stage, you don't have the same attachments. That's the perfect example of this is Donald Trump, because Donald Trump was not a politician, yet somehow he became the president. He took the Plutonian route versus Joe Biden, who's been in politics all his life. So how does a politician who's been into politics their whole life, this seems to be driving the country in the direction that no one asked him to drive it, versus with Trump? Everybody was at least getting money. I'm not saying everybody was happy. It was but it was like the Wild Wild West when Trump was in office. Like Wild Wild West now, it's just complete restriction when it comes to Biden. Why? Why does a person who has been into politics their entire career puts us in this situation, and the person who took the Plutonian route put us in a whole different situation? We didn't get stimulus checks and all these things until Trump. What other president gave out stimulus checks and all this, giving people money like, yo, do something. Here's a kick start if you need it. If you need it, here's a quick start. Get them bills paid, get these things, and let it happen. We ain't seeing this. This had to come from a Plutonian route. Everybody else started at the sun. They're all about personal control and personal power. We don't have to look no further than Hunter Biden and his story. I don't have to mention any of the details, but if you know about Hunter Biden, then you clearly see this is a solar energy versus a Plutonian energy, because it's just all about personal gain and personal satisfaction. So on that note, again, I know I was supposed to be speaking about all these other things, all these other politics, but I just wanted to throw the spirituality in there. So now that we set the mood, now we can go in. Okay, here it is. So based upon what has been going on with Russia, there is a 40-mile long convoy going from Belarus to Kyiv. So essentially there's 40 miles of military personnel heading to Kyiv. We also don't see any airstrikes from Russia. So Russia is not using its air force. And it's like I had to go to the dark web to even get some of this stuff. So I'm just going to put that out there. So I'm going to say some things you're not going to really hear anywhere else, at least from the Western perspective, because I had to utilize my VPN to access certain websites. I had to pretend like I was in Germany to access certain websites. That's just how real it's becoming. The censorship is crazy. I'm like, damn, I actually have to use my VPN now. I've already had a VPN, but I was just using it just because I pay for it every month. It ain't because I actually had to. Now I actually have to use a VPN to even get certain information. But moving on, they're also accusing Russia of using forbidden weapons. So if you've been following along, I already spoke about Russia being connected with the planet Uranus and cutting edge technology. So Russia is already connected with cutting edge technology. So not only are they connected with cutting edge technology, they're actually using forbidden weapons that are, you can say, that are not gentlemanlike in war, where you're just killing up every goddamn thing, right? The senseless death, right? So what I mean by forbidden weapons, they're saying Russia is using things like vacuum and cluster bombs. Russia is using vacuum and cluster bombs, which is cutting edge technology. These are things that we haven't seen used in wars before, because again, we try to be civilized even in war, which is strange. But even in war, we're like, oh, there's just certain weapons we shouldn't use. But it's funny, this only applies to other countries. This doesn't apply to the US or NATO, because we've seen what happened in US when we dropped that atomic bomb on Japan. So for whatever reason, it doesn't apply to us. But everybody else, we want to be civilized, even though we're dropping nukes on motherfuckers. And Japan actually wants to host nuclear weapons for the US. And that's why China is not really feeling that. Like, yo, just look back at your history. You see what America did to you before. Now you want to host their nuclear weapons. So there's a lot of politics going on with these nuclear warfare and this nuclear weapons and these forbidden weapons. Also, what's going on is we are forced to do business with Russia. That's why we still buy approximately 17 million barrels of oil every month, because Russia produces oil while Ukraine produces uranium and neon. So they have valuable resources. So even in the midst of this war, we're still buying oil from Russia. So while everybody's condemning it on the world stage, we're still spending money with Russia. So that's the catch-22. So while we openly condemn what's going on in Russia, we're still doing business with the so-called devil, right? We call Putin a devil, but we're still doing business with the devil. Because we are dependent on Russia. This is why the war is going the way it is, because we're really dependent on Russia. And we don't want to acknowledge that dependency, just like we don't want to acknowledge our dependency on China. That's why most things are made in China. So we don't want to acknowledge these things, but it keeps putting us deeper and deeper and deeper in the hole, because when things like this occur, we can only do so much. We can only do so much. Why? Because we don't want to get our oil from the Middle East for obvious reasons. So we were okay with getting it from Russia, but now Russia has become, public enemy number one. Now we will be forced to do business with, it's either you got to do business with Russia or the Middle East. So this is why the world has certain resources that, if you're a capitalist, and America is all about capitalism, instead of us building our own, we're going to outsource and we're going to get it from other people. So that's the dirty part of the business. The dirty part of the business is you still have to do business with your enemies. You may have open enemies, but behind closed doors, you're still spending money. It can't get no realer than that. We also have a Russian representative, or not, I'm not going to say a Russian representative, but Russia is actually negotiating on our behalf in the Vienna talks in Iran. So in the Vienna talks in Iran, Russia is actually speaking on the behalf of the U.S. It's actually representing the U.S. So when it comes to more oil, the Vienna talks, we've been represented by Russia while all this is going on. So I'm saying all this to say and to point out both sides, because again, I'm taking a neutral side. It ain't pro-Russia, it ain't pro-Ukraine, it ain't pro-US, it ain't pro-anything. I'm just pointing out the facts, and then we can arrive at our own conclusions as to what it all means. Also, it's been a lot of talk about a mysterious rocket is supposed to crash into the moon in 3 days. So I took these notes on the 2nd. So I guess on March 5th. So about in the next 2 days, it's supposed to be this mysterious rocket that's supposed to crash into the moon. And originally we thought it was space junk. So basically it's really space junk. So it's a lot of space junk in space. So all this shit we be doing in space, we leave all this space junk, and it looks terrible. So we've left so much space junk, and they basically try to keep track of it. But this particular space junk went off the radar. Nobody has been able to keep track of it till recently. Then when they realized, oh, this is about to fly straight into the moon. So we're going to see, let's say March 5th. So again, we see this right after that new moon in Pisces or Aquarius, if you're going by the Eastern alignments, that this mysterious rocket or space junk is going to hit the moon and possibly leave a crater. So how that's going to affect everybody? Again, we are all influenced by the moon, but trust me, when that occurs, while everybody's just trying to shove it off, like, okay, it's just an impact to the moon, it ain't gonna mean anything. Well, we're going to see about that. Also, AirTags. Apple has released AirTags that helps you track, all of your items, your personal items, but people have been using AirTags to track other people, which was completely not in Apple's peripheral, you can say. So you got people dropping AirTags and women's purses and women's belongings, tracking them. You got all type of spooky shit going on. So they're trying to update their AirTags so that you can at least know if you're being tracked and all that, because there's just been people doing a bunch of weirdo shit, like just dropping the AirTags and then just doing all type of craziness. So Apple is going to be updating that so that doesn't happen as frequently as it's been going on. Also, when it came to the State of the Union address, Joe Biden did not mention Tesla. He only mentioned Ford and GM. Why is this? As we know, Tesla, has been a big dog, especially when it comes to electric vehicles. They've been front center stage. I guess that's how you say it, front and center with it when it comes to these electric vehicles. But they were not mentioned at all. They only mentioned, Joe Biden only mentioned Ford and GM. Why did he not mention Tesla? He did not mention Tesla because Tesla is not unionized. Tesla is not unionized. And because Tesla is not unionized, then the White House or the president doesn't want to do business with Tesla, even though Tesla, is doing everything with the Starlink and have these government contracts. But they're really trying to limit. They basically are trying to spread the wealth, because Tesla, is worth a lot of money. So they're trying to get Ford and GM essentially back in the game, because they've been, I'm not going to say failing, but they haven't been doing the best before all this electric vehicle conversation started happening. So America is trying to take the side of Ford and GM and not be so wild west with it, because Elon Musk is a wild. I'm not gonna say a wild person, but he's definitely a Uranian at least. I'll keep it there with it. He's a Uranian at least. So GM is investing $7 billion, which will create 4,000 jobs. And Ford is investing $11 billion, creating 11,000 jobs. But here are the facts about Tesla. Tesla has invested double of what Ford and GM invested and created 50,000 jobs. So while Ford is talking about this $11 billion investment and GM is talking about their $7 billion investment, Tesla has doubled those investments and created more jobs. So that's why, Elon Musk had a couple tweets to say about that. Because I'm investing more money and we're creating more jobs, but we don't even get a mention at all. We're going to mention these other companies that's not doing as good I'm not going to say it's doing as good, but they're not as advanced in their technology as us. But they get mentioned because it is about capitalism and they're trying to spread the wealth. They don't want to, okay, Elon Musk is doing the space, he's doing the cars. They don't want them doing every goddamn thing. They feel like they're going to give them too much power. The U.S. has a $60 trillion national debt. So for the people that don't know, we are $60 trillion in debt. That means we owe $60 trillion. So as we make America, the greatest and the best, as we like to believe, we actually owe everybody else about 60 trillion. So how we're still able to maintain these top spots, it's not because of money. It's just because the American dollar is the backing currency of the world. That is the only reason why we're able to have a $60 trillion debt and everybody's just cool with it. But this is also why we have to do business with Russia and why we have to do business with China, even though we don't like them. So there's a lot of things going on with politics that just is never mentioned or not connecting. So with the Build Back Better plan that Joe Biden is pushing, it will increase the debt over 24%. So we will actually increase the debt if we pass the bills that he was speaking about at the State of the Union address. So when it comes to Russian sanctions, the gaming industry is sanctioning Russia. Also, half of us, and again, these are just fun facts, half of us don't receive proper sex education. Going back to what I was speaking about earlier, half of us don't receive proper sex education. So that means half of us have no fucking clue as to the reality of sexuality or the eighth house, as I was mentioning earlier. So that means half of us have no idea. That's why, again, it's either straight or gay and all these things. This is due to us not knowing the complications of sexuality. We think it's just all about penetration. It's just all about man-woman penetration. It's like we have the most basic understanding of this. And that's why we have the ideals we have. And then when you take away the spirituality from these ideals, it just remains carnality. It just becomes a bunch of carnality. And that's what it has become, carnality. So whenever we mention sex, again, we just think about carnality. We're not thinking about the spiritualness behind that. Also, Anonymous has shut down the Russian space agency, or attempting to, which Russia would then call an act of war. So basically, Russia is saying what's going to lead to a real war is these hackers, because there's a lot of cyber warfare going on. Even though we don't know it, there is a lot of cyber warfare going on. So Anonymous has engaged or declared war with Russia. So Russia is doing a bunch of cyber attacks, and I'm sure Russia is giving out a bunch of cyber attacks. So the prime ministers of Russia, or the prime minister of Russia, is speaking about the true war is going to be due to hackers. We think it's going to be guns and bloodshed, but what's really going to kick it off is these hackers and cyber warfare. So you can say World War III will be kicked off due to cyber warfare, not because a bunch of missiles and guns. So just keep that in mind. Also, the trucker convoy in DC. So we saw what happened in Canada, with the trucker convoy, and they were going to do one in DC, but very little people showed up. So it was supposed to be this massive event. They were supposed to shut down Washington DC. A bunch of truckers was gonna flood the streets and all this. Same thing they was doing in Canada. But somehow the plans changed. Nobody showed up. And you see that it didn't even become a news. Nobody mentioned it. I'm like, I had to dig into the depths to even find it. It's like nobody even mentioned it. Like, it's supposed to be this big thing, then nobody shows up. And they claim it's because of the Russian-Ukraine war. But we can assume whatever we want to assume. Also, there's been articles speaking about the war can last up to 10 to 20 years. The same thing that was occurring with Afghanistan. So they're saying this, initially people were thinking that this was going to be over pretty quickly, but as we see that all these countries are getting involved, this can last up to 20 years. So just imagine that. Just imagine this whole conflict lasting up to 20 years. Let's wrap your mind around that again. So we went into Afghanistan or Iraq in 2001, and we just got out in 2021. So just imagine that. Also, Nike stopped selling shoes in Russia because they don't have anybody to deliver the shoes. So Nike is no longer selling shoes in Russia. I'm also seeing very strange headings, like some companies are offering masturbation breaks. So if we're talking about the future, in the future we're going to have like these little pods that allow people to masturbate on their breaks. So this is futuristic. It's literally a headline. So I guess that's a good thing. I'm not going to say it's a bad thing. There's also talks about black holes colliding. I've seen some news articles that speak about there's 2 black holes that's going to collide in the next 10,000 years, which they say is going to lead to a complete reset. Of course, we're not going to be here to see it in this form. We may be in another form, but we're not going to see that in this form. But I found that pretty interesting. So, colliding black holes, which will lead to a reset in the next 10,000 years. Also, the numbers. Because according to Ukraine has, you can say, killed about 2,500 Russians to 3,000 Russians. But when I read Russian media, they said they only lost 500 soldiers. So Ukraine said 2,500, but then Russia said only 500, and they said they killed about 2,000 Ukrainians, and Ukraine said they only lost about 500. So there's a lot of propaganda going on. There's a lot of propaganda going on. So it's like we're getting 2 different numbers. So we don't know how many people is dying and how many people, because again, if you listen to Russia, they only lost 500. If you listen to Ukraine, they lost 2,500. And again, the numbers become reversed. So again, we have 2 different conflicting numbers. But again, this was what they call the fog of war. Also, Russian billionaires are getting their assets confiscated. They just seized a yacht from a Russian billionaire. So if you are a Russian billionaire with assets in different countries, and that country has made sanctions against Russia, they're going to take your assets, and one of those assets is a yacht. So again, if you're a billionaire, you got all these yachts, all these properties, all these yachts, anything that can be transferred into money, they're going to seize it. So that's definitely not good news for Russian billionaires. 22 Russian billionaires are set to lose $83 billion in assets. So throughout 22 Russian billionaires, they're going to lose about $83 billion in assets. So just wrap your head around that. And lastly, on this page, I have more, but just on this particular page, Tibetan Buddhist statues are being destroyed by China. So China doesn't like Tibet, just like China doesn't like Taiwan, or basically China wants to take over Tibet, just like it wants to take over Taiwan. So they're destroying the culture. So there's a lot of Buddha statues, which are thousands of years old at this point. So they're destroying ancient history because they want to take over the land. So you say this it's an attack on Buddha. So the Buddha statues are being attacked by China. So there's a lot of mayhem going on in Tibet, which is the crown chakra of the world. The root chakra of the world is in California, but the crown chakra of the world is in Tibet. So when we start seeing things in the crown chakra, and then we're seeing different things in the root chakra, we begin to see how the world, or how the earth, is reacting to these things. So the world is going to definitely react to Buddha being destroyed, because Buddha created the first world religion. So before the Christ, before Muhammad, before any of these people, we had Buddha. Buddha is what gave us insight into reincarnation. Buddha is what gave us insight into karma. So karma, reincarnation, this is all ideas of Buddha. So we see these ideas are still prevalent. So the fact that there's an attack on Buddha, or Buddhism, again, we see where the world really is. So we say there's a spiritual warfare going on, as I spoke about with Russia and Ukraine. There's a war between pagan goddesses, and in Tibet there's a war against religion, because obviously that religion will then be replaced. But we will see what the spirit has to say to that. We will see if the spirit allows that to happen, because it will only happen if the spirit allows. It's not going to happen because of a bunch of guns and weapons. No, I have more, because again, I was planning on doing multiple videos over these days, but again, I was having technical issues, so I just got a bunch of notes that I was supposed to deliver over a course of videos. So I'm just giving everybody everything that I have here, again, to keep everybody abreast. So even more, what else we got? Now, as I was speaking about earlier about Russia having forbidden weapons, now they're talking about thermobaric bombs, which is called the father of bombs. So while I spoke about vacuum bombs and cluster bombs, now they're talking about thermobaric bombs, which they call the father of bombs, because it can kill up to 10,000 people in one go, or at one time. So these are the type of talks where we're seeing when it comes to Russia and using these forbidden weapons, and why people are kind of walking on eggshells when it comes to Russia, because of all this cutting edge technology that they may have to deal with. Also, a Holocaust museum was destroyed in Ukraine, because the president, Zelensky, is actually a Jew, which I didn't know. I didn't know he was Jewish, because it gives very strange dynamics. Because if Zelensky is Jewish and Putin is all about, as he says, he wants to demilitarize Ukraine due to neo-Nazism, and of course the Nazis were against the Jews. So the fact that Putin feels like neo-Nazis are running the country, so that's what he's really saying, is Jews have become the new Nazis. That's what he's saying. Because you're like, why would a Jewish president be a neo-Nazi? That they contradict each other. But according to Putin, that's exactly what they're doing. They're using Jewish religion to cover up what's really going on, which Putin has been able to detect due to NATO closing in on Russian territory, right? Also, when it comes to the State of the Union address, Biden spoke about he's going to release 30 million barrels of oil reserved. Now, on the surface, that seems like a lot of oil. But if we do the mathematics, that actually only amounts to a day and a half worth of oil. So 30 million barrels of oil is only a day and a half's worth of oil. So when he said it, people were clapping and people were happy. But 30 million barrels, again, it seems like a lot. But in reality, we see that it's only a days and a half worth of oil once you do the mathematics. Ukraine is having racial issues with other races escaping the war. And again, this is the whole reason why Ukraine is going through what it's going through right now, because obviously Ukraine is not innocent. If we're in the West, if you're pro-Ukraine, then Ukraine is innocent. Ukraine didn't do anything, but Ukraine doesn't necessarily have its hands clean. Ukraine has been suppressing Russians in their country. Ukraine has been suppressing a lot of races and a lot of cultures and creeds. So their hands are not clean either. And I'm not saying Russia's hands are clean, because they're definitely not either. Also, the German ex-chancellor. So the ex-chancellor of Germany, his whole staff has quit because he has Russian ties. So once again, the ex-chancellor of Germany, his entire staff quit on him due to his Russian ties. And this is what I mean. The world is now taking sides. You either have to be pro-Ukraine or pro-Russia, and it has to be made very clear, or you have to remain neutral. If you're not neutral, then you have to make it clear what side you're on. Because this is why they call this a new world order, because this will change the power structure, because everybody will now take sides, or are forced to take sides, even if they don't want to. So the UK is barring Russian ships from its ports. So if you have a Russian ship, your Russian ships cannot port in the UK. Also, there's a lot of talk about what occurred in January 6th, the insurrection. They keep bringing that up, January 6th, especially when it comes to Trump, and they use that as a main reason why he should never be the president again, due to what occurred, even though it was a mass ritual. And we have other things occurring in the country that are more important than January 6th. But we don't speak about these things. Instead, we just speak about that. So that essentially becomes a major distraction, because it was a major ritual. So we're going to distract ourselves with the insurrection and then avoid solving the real problems. So that's what's going on with that. Also, Boeing suspends jet maintenance for Russian airlines. So Russian airlines cannot get their planes serviced by Boeing. So it's like Russia is really getting hit with all these sanctions. So the only really thing to do is either Russia is going to be completely independent, which I'm sure that they're prepared to do, and everybody else is going to be dependent on them. So it's really a crazy scheme what you think about it, because all these sanctions that's being put on Russia, if Russia is able to deal with all these sanctions and still maintain their power, and we still have to do business with them, and they're able to maintain their sovereignty and further gain their independence, then that's going to be a hell of a battlefield. And again, that's why I say Russia is really Uranus, because if we're talking about them maintaining their freedom and being independent, that is the energy of Uranus. So that means they're going beyond Saturn. They're going beyond the limitations of Saturn, while Ukraine wants to embedded itself within the matrix. That's why Ukraine wants to be a part of NATO. It wants to be a part of the other countries. It's trying to embed itself in the matrix, while Russia is trying to step outside the matrix and be completely independent. So again, we're going to see how it plays out. Either Russia is going to maintain its independence and we still got to do business with them, or they're going to lose their independence and we don't have to do business with them. We'll see what happens. Also, if you are in Russia, you can no longer use foreign currency to make any purchases. So any purchases have to be in the ruble. So you can no longer use foreign currency because they don't want politics to come into the influence of entrepreneurs. So basically, the Russian powers that be don't want the entrepreneurs, the people with the money, with the resources, to be under political pressure. So they restricted them from using any type of foreign currency. Also, MasterCard and Visa, MasterCard and Visa limit Russian operations. So if you have MasterCard or Visa, you're going to run into some problems. Also, Canada has banned imports of Russian oil. So no Russian oil can come through Canada because Canada has banned it. Also, there's a sports genocide going on against Russian athletes. So if you are a Russian athlete right now, you are going up against sports genocide because everybody is trying to ban Russian athletes. Nobody wants to face Russian athletes. So, so if you're a Russian athlete, you're just getting caught in the midst of all this, and you're basically being blackballed. Russia is being blackballed in the sports arena and all arenas. Even though you can say they don't have anything to do with anything, but they're all being blackballed. To the point where Russian athletes have boycotted the Olympic meeting over ethnic discrimination. So they have been so discriminated that they have boycotted the Olympic meeting. Also, Putin was stripped of his Taekwondo black belt. So many people may not know that Putin was actually is a black belt, but we can say was because he was stripped of his title, because you can say it's violating one of the ethics of Taekwondo, peace before war. So the fact that he's going to war when he can remain at peace, he got his Taekwondo belt revoked. Let's see what else. Also, FIA and UEFA suspend all Russian teams. So FIA and UEFA suspend all Russian teams. So I believe that's racing. So racing, the car racing, NASCAR type arena. They suspend all the Russian teams. So according to Russia, Russia feels that Ukraine has sold out to the system, that the system can buy politicians and that the system is completely corrupt. This is Russia's perspective, according to their websites and their prime minister, so on and so forth. So they feel Ukraine and everybody in NATO is just bowing down to the system, and Russia is like, where's the ancestry? Where's the tradition? Where's the culture? Everybody's trying to be pro America or pro US. Where's the culture? Have we forgotten who we are? This is the perspective of Russia. So Russia wants to stay in tune with their roots, while Ukraine wants to go in a different direction. So again, is Russia wrong for wanting to stay within its roots? Is Ukraine wrong for wanting to be completely different? We'll see. Also, going back to death, there's also some very interesting information about death. As I said, there's 30 seconds of activity in the brain after the heart stops. However, death produces the same brain reactions as sleep, memory, dream, or meditation. And this is scientific, because they just did a study. They observed someone as they died. As a man died, they had all the technology hooked up to his brain, so they were able to observe his brain activity while he was going through the gates of death. And according to their findings, again, death produces the same brain reactions as sleep, memory, dreams, and meditation. So when you die, death is more like a meditation, a dream, a memory, or a sleep. A sleep is basically like a dream, a memory, or a meditation. or basically a high. If you are into drugs, it's like a high. So just ponder around that. So while we think death is just so disgusting and just we should be afraid of it, it's more like a meditation. So if you master meditation, you have mastered death. So if you want a sneak preview of death, go into meditation. Take a nap. Dig into your memory banks. Visit your Akashic records. This is the closest to death you will get without having to transition. So that means death isn't fixed, it's mutable. So that means everybody doesn't die at the same time. Meaning some people may have 15 seconds of brain activity, some people may have 30, some people may have 45, but it's not mutable. Because again, we have usually measured death based on the stopping of the heartbeat. Once the heart stops beating, then we consider a person dead. But death does not occur when your heart stops. So you live on, again, even if it's for a short time. So that means death is mutable. So death is not a stagnant situation that we once thought it was. Because we know when you are experiencing death, just like when you are experiencing birth, your pineal gland is producing DMT. So you are having a DMT hallucination when you are experiencing death, when you are dreaming, and also when you are born. So this is a natural DMT trip. So death is a DMT trip. Birth is a DMT trip. And dreams is a DMT trip. Right? There we go. You therefore will most likely hallucinate at death, just like you were hallucinating at birth, just like you hallucinate when you dream. So death is a grand hallucination. It is the grandest of grand hallucinations. Because we have very little scientific evidence of near-death experiences. Because it's been plenty of people who have spoken about their near-death experiences, but we don't have enough scientific evidence to prove any of these things. And that's why this whole experiment with them being able to observe the brain activity of a dying man, this was the first time they were able to do this. And you would think as long as we've been alive, as deep as they are into science, we still haven't observed people dying. So this is still like a mystery up until now, because neuroscience is still very new. So neuroscience is understanding how the brain works. And there's not that many neuroscientists. This is why experiments are always done on rats and monkeys. Why are we always experimenting on rats and monkeys? Because they are vessels of Mercury, meaning they are very intelligent, smart beings. So whether you're talking about a rat or you're talking about a monkey, they are very intelligent beings. So that's why we're always experimenting from them, and that's why we feel we came from monkeys. If you believe in the theory of evolution, you feel like we came from monkeys. And this is because monkeys and rats embody the energy of Mercury, the energy of smarts. So ever since the war in Russia, and not in Russia, but ever since the war in Ukraine has started, it has created 1 million refugees. So 1 million refugees have been created due to the war. So this 1 million people are going to be going all over the world. Japan is taking some refugees. I'm sure the U.S. will take some refugees. Poland is taking some refugees. So there's going to be many countries opening their doors for the refugees coming from Ukraine. So just so we have a number on that. Japan is also freezing the assets of 4 Russian banks. So 4 Russian banks, let me see, are having their assets frozen in Japan. And I think I spoke about the mercenaries coming from 16 countries. So it's 1,000 mercenaries coming from 16 different countries going into Ukraine to help them in the fight. There's also 19 countries supplying weapons to Ukraine. So when it comes to the countries that are supplying weapons, 19 of them are supplying weapons. Russia wants Ukraine to be neutral and non-nuclear. So basically that's one of That's one of the negotiation points that Russia is reiterating. Russia wants Ukraine to be neutral and non-nuclear. But if Ukraine joins NATO, then Ukraine becomes nuclear. That's why Russia is not having it with Ukraine joining NATO, because that will make Ukraine a nuclear country capable of nuclear destruction, which is bad for Russia. And that's why we are here. Russia already proved that they can function just fine on sanctions. And I'm pretty sure. And that's why they are continuing with their advance. They're not backing up. They're not slowing down. They're just being very calculated and precise about what they're doing. And again, it's because we are more dependent on Russia than Russia is dependent on us. We've always known that. We just realize that now because of the war. So everything that has already been simmering in the bottom of the pot, you can say, now it's just becoming more and more obvious because we can't ignore it. It's the same thing that was happening with China in the pandemic or COVID. We begin to look at China real weird, but we should have been looking at China real weird. But because of what occurred, now we're looking like, damn, we even if we wanted to cut ties from China, we can't. So again, COVID showed us that we can't cut ties with China. And then the Russian-Ukraine conflict is showing us that we can't cut our ties with Russia. We need China for its resources, just like we need Russia for its resources. So again, this is why politics gets real sticky, because you kind of have to accept all of these things, and you have to find your place within all of it. Also, Trump has did a recent interview, and Trump has said the country is going to hell. So Trump has said the country is going to hell, which is exactly what I said when I said we are now in the underworld. The world has now entered into the underworld. The underworld forces are now holding the earth intact. The reason why we're not just blowing everybody up, the reason why there isn't nuclear warfare right now is because the world is being held up by the underworld. That we would say the Titans and all those clip-offic beings, all those demonic and scary beings that everybody don't want to deal with, but it's those beings that's keeping shit running like it's supposed to right now. If it wasn't for the underworld, we would be fucked right now. But the underworld has taken power. All right, so that's that set of notes. Let's see what else I got here. Let's see what else we got. I think that may be it. Let me just make sure. Yeah, I believe that's it. So, with that, I'm gonna look up something right now. So I'm gonna see if anything is happening. So, because I see I've been live for about 2 hours now. So let me see if anything has occurred since we have been live here. But for the most part, we see that that's pretty much what's been going on for the past 3-4 days. That's the whole summary of everything that's been going on. So currently it says Russian forces seize huge Ukrainian nuclear plant. And this happened 21 minutes ago. So Russia has seized a Ukrainian nuclear plant 21 minutes ago. Also, LA County will lift indoor mask rules Friday. I guess which is today now. Oh, what's up, Xander? So if you're in LA County, the indoor mask will end Friday. Here in Las Vegas, the mask mandate has also ended, but I still wear my mask. That just has became a part of my uniform at this point. So anywhere I go, I still wear my mask. I like being mysterious. It just is what it is. It's just Scorpio time. All right, let's see what else. Also, some woman named Sherry, what is it, Papini? Sherry Papini. She has been arrested. She faked her kidnapping, which was in California. So a California woman named Sherry Papini, she faked her kidnapping and now she has been arrested. And again, I'm not just go read every little thing I see, but only if it's interesting. Let's see. Also, 10 hospitalized, 100 people displaced after apartment building explodes in Silver Spring. And I believe this is in Maryland. So in Maryland, I guess the city named Silver Spring, there was an explosion which displaced 100 people and 10 people has been hospitalized for apartment building fire. Yeah, so an apartment building fire in Silver Spring, Maryland has displaced 100 people and 10 people are in the hospital as we speak. So that's what's going on in Maryland. Florida has just approved the strictest abortion ban in the state's history. So Florida has just voted to ban abortions after 15 weeks. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm not seeing too much else going on right now. So this is the latest news. So the world events. We talked about Russia. We talked about what's going on in politics. We talked about some spirituality. We talked about the sexuality. We talked about the Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. Mention a couple little things here. Some strange spirituality. We just call it strange spirituality. So yeah, pretty much that's everything that's been going on. Also, Apple, I don't know if I spoke about that. Apple has suspended the App Store in Russia, so you can't access the App Store if you're in Russia. No, I don't think you can even buy an iPhone either if you're in Russia. So you don't have access to the App Store or iPhones currently. And let's see what's going on in cryptocurrency. Let's see. So we got Bitcoin trading at 41K right now. Ethereum trading at 2,715. So essentially Bitcoin is down 5%. Ethereum is down 6%. But it's over 40K, so it's still doing better than it was. Bitcoin, I think, has got down to about 35K, so it's still trading around 41K. So cryptocurrency is doing pretty well. And we don't have to go into stocks and all that, but that's pretty much what's going on. I think we'll end it right there. So next time, again, I'm going to do my best to come on more often. So now that I have fixed everything, we don't have too many technical issues. So if you don't see me daily, expect to see me, I guess, every other day. Just to keep everybody abreast, again, what's going on in politics, what's going on with the Russia-Ukraine conflict, what's going on, in the spirit world, what's going on with the planets. Yeah, we also talked about the new moon in Pisces. But if you're Eastern, the new moon was in Aquarius. So how does that change things if the moon is in Aquarius instead of Pisces? And this will be the last thing before we wrap up. How does that change things? Well, we understand Aquarius is technology. Aquarius is also cyberspace. So new moon in cyberspace means the moon was transitioning. This new moon was transitioning through Aquarius, through cyberspace. And again, we've been speaking a lot about cyber warfare. We've been speaking a lot about technomagic or technomancy. So new moon in Aquarius represents technomancy. Going into the depths of technomancy, going into the depths of technology. And again, the new moon represents your intuition. It represents your lunar waves. So accessing cyberspace with the lunar ways. So it's like astral traveling. So new moon in Aquarius means that the magical currency is currently in technology. So utilizing technology for its magical components, for its magical uses, because that's what the new moon is representing for the next 2 weeks. So find the magical uses and the spiritual uses for your technology, for your technomancy. So Eastern is 13 cycles in the year. Yes, when you're dealing with Eastern astrology or Vedic astrology, they definitely have 13 moons, 13 full moons a year. Yes. Just like they deal with the lunar mansions, just like Chinese New Year. Chinese New Year is the first new moon of the year. So whenever you go to the east, they're more connected to the moon. When you come to the west, we're more connected to the sun. And again, that's why I was speaking about earlier, where that's why even our spirituality is still solar based. We're still trying to get things out of the material plane, even with spirituality. So even if we claim to be spiritual, we're still trying to manifest. We're still trying to do all these physical things. We ain't talking about going outside of reincarnation. Most people ain't talking about, most spiritual people ain't talking about going outside the realm of reincarnation. They're still talking about physicality, because that's just the nature of being here in the West. So when you combine the Eastern perspective with the Western perspective, then you get a more complete view of what's really going on. Because once you deal with Eastern occultism or Eastern spirituality, Eastern astrology, it gives you a perspective of what's really occurring in your own subconscious versus what's happening on the world stage. And yes, you do have, the 12 zodiac signs. You also have the 13 zodiac signs dealing with Ophiuchus. So this is why I try to bring both perspectives so that we have a full context, so you can make the decision as to what makes the most sense to you. If you prefer Western, then that's the new moon in Pisces. If you prefer the Eastern, then that's the new moon in Aquarius. So you can decide, so you analyze for the next 2 weeks, and you see, well, did it make more sense that the new moon was in Pisces, or did it make more sense that the new moon was in Aquarius? Did you feel more connected to cyberspace? Did you feel more inclined to practice cyber magic? Or were you more inclined to enter into, you can say, divination? Were you more inclined to pull out your tarot cards? Were you more inclined to go into meditation? Were you more inclined to, you can say, go into the death state, go into the underworld? So when you go into the full moon, so when we make it to the full moon, you will have your answer. So as we go through these 2 weeks and you come up to the full moon, you just ask yourself, well, did I go deeper into technology, or did I go deeper into my own unconscious mind? Did I go deeper into my higher self, Aquarius, or did I go deeper into my lower self, Pisces? So by the time we reach the new moon, you definitely will have that answer. Then you can make a better decision as to, do you prefer the Eastern or the Western, based on your own personal experience. Is that done deliberately by the West? Yes, it is. It is definitely done deliberately. So yes, the fact that we pay more attention to the sun and we're more solar orientated is definitely done on purpose. The Gregorian calendar is definitely purposely done. That's why we pay attention to the Gregorian calendar and not the lunar calendar. So yes, it is definitely purposeful, and it's because where we are on the grid of the planet. That's essentially how it's supposed to be. So half of the planet is into solar magic, and the other half of the planet is into lunar magic. So you just ask yourself, are you more into solar magic or lunar magic? Are you more of a person that lives month to month, or are you a person that lives more so by season by season? So you just got to ask yourself, are you the person, okay, I gotta make sure everything is done month by month? So if you are on the month to month cycle, then you deal with the lunar currency. If you're on a season to season, so basically you'll see, okay, it's a new season, so I got to come with a new style, new creations. So just depending on how your life is set up, you're gonna know if you're more solar based or lunar based. So depending on if you're more solar based or lunar based, you're going to have a preference, right? And yes, you can definitely feel a sense of both, because we are both. Again, we are the feminine and the masculine. We are the magic as well as the technology, technomancers. So we are both. We are the Uranus as well as the Neptune. Go live more often. Yeah, the only reason I haven't been going live is because I was dealing with all this technical issues to the point where I had to completely switch my software. So now I'm on a completely different software than I was prior to doing my other live streams. So this is a completely different software. So hopefully, as we see, if everything goes good with this one, unless we run into any issues, then we'll be good. Y'all should definitely see me more often. And again, I would like to show up more often. Again, it just be the technology. So now that we got that out the way, that should no longer be an issue. I'm curious about the black cube being a portal to harness Saturn to achieve enormous tasks that require conflict. That is definitely the purpose of Saturn. That's why you start at the crown chakra, and you end up at Saturn. Saturn should be your last destination when it comes to the inner planets or the 7 chakras. Your root chakra is Saturn. So to master your root chakra, you start at your crown chakra instead of starting at your root chakra and going upward. So yes, that cube science, especially the science of Islam, is definitely the energy of Saturn, because Saturn used to be our sun. Before we was worshiping our current sun, we would worship Saturn. We would, pull upon the currencies of Saturn. So that is still active. This one went smooth. Yes, I appreciate it. So yeah, as y'all see, yeah, it was real glitchy. I was going through a lot of glitches because again, I was using OBS. I just tell it what I was using OBS. For those who live stream, y'all know what OBS is. So I was using OBS, and OBS is free to download, right? So anybody can download OBS, whether you're on Windows or Mac. So I was using OBS to live stream, and now I'm using paid software. Because OBS is like, I'll be running into issues, but again, it's a free product, so you can't expect it to be perfect. So I'm not necessarily upset at that. But now what I'm using, now I have to pay for this monthly. So if this works smoother, it's because this is a paid product versus something that I just downloaded for free. So that's the main difference. So as they say, you get what you pay for. You get what you pay for, right? So I just got to pay a monthly fee now. Makes perfect sense, yeah. So I just got to pay for it now. You know what I mean? So, which is no issue, So long as we continue to support each other, we show each other love, then it ain't gonna be an issue. So if y'all prefer this setup and this is no problem, then we'll keep going. So yeah, we'll definitely keep going if there's no issues. And if any issues arise, I'll be sure to do some troubleshooting. So unless anyone has any questions, we'll go ahead and check out. And again, next time I'll be talking with the filter, because I know when I speak up close to the mic, the B's and the P's pop. So I'll definitely do more to make sure that doesn't become, too disturbing. Because I know, all that popping may not be too pleasant to the ears. So I definitely want to deal with that. But yeah, let me go ahead and... Why did the sun start being worshipped instead of, why did the sun start being worshipped instead of Saturn? Because of the cycle change. So basically, every now and then it's the changing of the gods, right? Just like, the Egyptian gods had their time to rule, the Roman gods had their time to rule, the Greek gods had their time to rule, the African deities had their time to rule. All the gods, all the pantheons had their cycles. So when we went from the transition from Saturn to the sun, that just represents a changing of the gods, the changing of cycles. So that's all it is. So eventually we will be just like the age of Aquarius. Before the age of Aquarius, it was the age of Pisces, which is more about religion. And that's essentially the Christ consciousness. The Christ consciousness comes from the age of Pisces. So when it comes to the age of Pisces, the ultimate peak was to be Christ-like, right? In the age of Aquarius, or the information age, the pinnacle was to be a technomancer. That's why we see everybody's live streaming, everybody's gaming, all this advances in technology. This is the information age. So the peak of that is to be a technomancer. It's to find the magical currency within the technology. If you're able to find the magical currency, just like in Pisces, you were able to find the magical currency within your own unconscious mind, within your own shadow self. So if you're able to find that magical currency within technology, that's how you master the information age. Reminds me of Atenism, most hated, when Aten introduced solar worship. Yes, Akhenaten was the first man to introduce to the world monotheism. That is an absolute fact. With the Aten was the first monotheistic religion. That's absolute fact. And that's why they tried to erase him from history. So yeah, we know the story. And Akhenaten was actually the first pharaoh to depict the Egyptians how they actually looked. So when we see the Egyptians, they didn't look like that. We didn't see how they actually looked till Akhenaten was ruling over Egypt at the time for 13 years. Because he did not advance the walls of Egypt, so he wasn't a war pharaoh trying to, conquer more land. He progressed the art. So instead of progressing the walls through war, he progressed the art through depicting the Aten, the Holy Family. So of course, again, and this is why Egypt failed at the end of the day, because they had lost their way, just like everybody else. They lost their way. What's his name? Akhenaten, which is the father of King Tut. So you just got type in King Tut, Akhenaten. Who introduced the monotheism? Akhenaten, Pharaoh Akhenaten, who was the father of King Tut. So yeah, he was the first to introduce monotheism with the worship of the Aten. And that's why he was erased from history till we rediscovered him. We rediscovered Akhenaten. People have forgot about Akhenaten until he was rediscovered. And again, it's just things like that. That's why people are interested in Egypt in the first place. It's because of all these new discoveries. When we discovered King Tut, the Book of the Law, when we rediscovered all these things, the Gnostic texts, we keep finding more and more things that take us closer to the original science. I had a dream. I was telling someone we are dark matter, and I pointed at the electricity poles and said we are powerful. Yes, that is the true goal. So while everybody else is trying to manifest with matter, because manifestation, there can be no manifestation without matter. Our manifestation is dark matter, because dark matter can be transferred via information or via the cyber waves. We just call it cyber waves. So when we get on technology, when we do these YouTube things, we're transferring information via the cyber waves. We are utilizing dark magic when we do that. That is the science of dark magic. Because through cyberspace, we can generate a magical currency. And again, and this is what we do. So that's why people come together to learn from each other. We learn from each other. Again, we ain't doing too much book reading. We ain't doing too much. We want the first-hand experience in real time. So again, that's why people on YouTube, to watch people express their own experimentation, which is better than just reading a book. So that's why we connect with people, because we want to connect to the experimentation. So that's why, so if you experiment, then you belong in cyberspace. Because that's all I've been doing. Just look back at my channel. My channel is just complete experimentation. My channel is not, okay, this is what I know to be true. This is experimentation. You see me doing experiments all over the country. I'm just doing experiments, coming to original conclusions. That's why I come to original conclusions, because I'm doing original research. So I don't watch too many people on YouTube. Honestly, I don't watch too many people on YouTube. I don't even want to mix my information with nobody else's information. That's why I don't watch like other spiritual people and all that, because I don't want to mix and match what I'm saying with what they're saying. So all I know is when I open my mouth, it's completely original, because I didn't get it from no one else. You know what I mean? I would be doing y'all a disservice just getting information from other people, and I don't have no first-hand experience. So that's why I always try to speak from a first-hand experience, first and foremost, because that's what truly matters. You are really on this, brother, full resonance. I appreciate that, because it's what we do. You know, I've dedicated myself to this, and I have an obligation. I have an obligation to show and prove. You know, I can use my platform to talk shit like everybody else. I'm not going to say everybody else, but you know, there's more than, you know. I don't have to be on YouTube speaking truth. I can be on YouTube bullshitting and pushing propaganda, and be a lot more successful at it. Again, that's why it's a catch-22. I'd be a lot more successful if I was pushing anything else, but because I just choose not to lie. You know, I never told a lie on there, but that comes at a cost. It comes at a cost. Dark matter is of Saturn, right? I remember studying carbon and how diamonds reflect the light spectrum in the carbon crystals, or was it crystallic structures, is a hexagon. Yeah, you can definitely say dark matter. Again, we don't have to necessarily place it upon a planet. So yeah, we don't have to put it on a whole, okay, well, dark matter is Saturn. Because you can say dark matter is within everything. There is nothing that's not dark matter. So you can say dark matter is a part of every planet. But if we're talking about carbon, yes, you can definitely say Saturn resonates with carbon. Now again, we're talking about dark matter and dark energy. Now we're talking about something else. But you're not wrong. You're not wrong in that sense. Because if we want to understand melanin, if we want to understand carbon, if we want to understand occultism, because that's what it was called before we were saying melanin, we were saying occultum. So before melanin, before carbon, it was occultum. That's how we describe melanin, occultum. So okay, well, occult. So what planet takes you to the occult? Oh well, that's actually Uranus. Uranus takes us to the occult, the strangeness of life, which is one planet beyond Saturn. So we really want to talk about strangeness, that would actually be Uranus. If we want to limit it to the planets, of course. So Saturn would teach you the mysteries of carbon. Then Uranus would teach you dark matter. Neptune would teach you dark energy. Pluto showed you how to transform with it. All matter emerges from dark matter. And before you have dark matter, you have dark energy. So everything comes from the dark energy that then transfers to dark matter, because there is no matter without energy or waves. So before dark matter, you have dark waves. And that's what we are influenced by in terms of the planetary influences, dark waves. So that's how the planets affect us, by dark waves, not light waves, dark waves. So that's why we can be influenced by Pluto, and Pluto is 3 million miles from the sun, almost 3 billion miles from the sun. Pluto is 3 billion miles away from the sun, but we still are influenced by Pluto. We're still influenced by Neptune, 2 billion miles. We're still influenced by Uranus, so on and so forth. These planets are nowhere near each other. So how does a planet over 3 billion miles away from the sun has an effect on me, and I'm nowhere near it? That's due to dark energy. Dark energy is what connects us into one whole. So you can say our currency is dark matter. Dark energy is a currency that connects all of us. The dark matter then represents the result of the connection. So basically the web. So dark energy is like the web that connects everything. So once everything is connected by the web, then the dark matter represents the results of the web. So basically the internet is like, they call the internet the World Wide Web. So if the internet is called the World Wide Web, you can say there's really no matter in the internet because the internet is all digital. Right? You can't call the internet matter. Of course, the internet is ran by material things, but the internet itself is digital. So if we're talking about dark matter, we're really talking about digital matter. And you're going to hear this for the first time. If dark matter is more about digital matter, because obviously we know dark matter is not matter. Well, what is the difference between matter and dark matter? Well, dark matter is digital. It is really that simple. So if we understand digital, then we can understand dark matter. Dark matter is digital matter. Now they're not going to call it that, but I'm calling it that. And I didn't hear that from nobody else. I'm literally saying that for the first time now. So if you truly want to understand dark matter, just look at it as digital matter. And if you're looking at it as digital matter, then that's going to take you beyond Saturn. That's going to take you to Uranus. So Uranus takes us into cyberspace. It takes us into the internet. It takes us into technology. And if dark matter is digital matter, well, what are you doing with the computer? What are you doing with the cell phones? What are you doing on the internet? You're manifesting digital matter, which we call what? Content. Just think about that. You see how it all connects? Content creators, content, that's dark matter. Dark matter is content. Because it's not tangible. Content is not tangible. You can't touch content. You need a medium to view the content. You have to view the content via the internet. You need to access the World Wide Web to view the content. Digital matter. Now again, ain't nobody else gonna tell you that. That is directly from me. You ain't gonna hear that from nobody else until after the fact. They may say it after. But yeah, this is the first time on the planet that has ever been said that way. But that's because, again, who else is gonna say that? But this is why I have to stay into the chambers. I have to stay studying. Just because I know these things, I have to still go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. So there is no ending. There's no beginning or ending. So just because I have certain things memorized, don't mean I know everything. Don't mean I stopped. So that's why I'm taking all these notes. That's why I keep studying, to come to original conclusions, to be innovative, so that when I come here, I am presenting something new and original, which is within the bounds of Uranus. So if it's about being a technomancer, you have to be innovative. You have to be original. And I can't be innovative and original by trying to absorb other people's content, because they are original. So I can't take nobody else's originality and then call myself original. Created and selling dark matter at massive scale. And that's where we're going to now. We're going into futuristically. That's exactly where we're going towards. It's not even going to be about a physical product anymore. It's going to be about a digital product, because that will be more effective than something physical. That's why we're into NFTs. That's the whole purpose why we're into NFTs. People aren't really concerned with the physical representation of a thing. They just need the NFT. They just need to prove that they own it, that they are the original owner. They just want the receipt. So again, that's what I'm saying. So that's the perfect example. That's why NFTs is taking over. That's digital. NFTs are completely digital. There is no physical representation of an NFT. It's completely digital. That's dark matter. That's why it's taking off. Same thing with cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is completely digital. Dark matter. Dark currency. So that's why all these worlds are kicking off at the same time. This is the manifestation of dark matter and dark energy. That's why everything is going digital. And the digital within the digital. The digital within the digital. So that's the truth. That's the occultum. It's the digital within the digital. So you have the dark matter, but behind the dark matter, you have the dark energy. That's the digital within the digital. That's when you get into the magical components of technology. Because most people have not tapped into the magical components, but some have. But the goal is to tap into the magical currency within the technology, because most people don't view technology as magical, but it is. Digital passport, exactly, because do the digital world, and that's why also the metaverse. That's why the metaverse is popping, because in the metaverse you can be in your room and go to LA, go to New York, go to London, go to China, the Great Wall of China. You can be in your room and go anywhere on this planet and beyond. That's why the metaverse is going to be popping, especially with the newer generations. Like, we may not care too much about the metaverse because we didn't already been alive 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years already. But in terms of the new generation coming up, they're going to be all into that metaverse. They want to go to China. They want to go to the other side of the world, and they ain't got to leave their room. That's exactly what they want. Crypto game is going to get real soon in terms of security. Exactly. That's why I said in my dream, we're melanin beings, and I'm just amazed that I woke up and now I can't stop hearing electricity everywhere. Exactly. Electromagnetic or electromagnetism. Electromagnetism. That's what our auras are. Our auras are electromagnetic. And we have multiple bodies. So if we got 7 chakras, we have 7 bodies, and all of those bodies are electromagnetic, which generates our aura. So the reason why we even have an aura is due to the electromagnetism manifesting from the astral body, not the physical body, but the astral body. So all that electricity, again, chakras and all that, major chakras, mini chakras, all that is a result from the astral body. That's why when you're doing any type of chakra work or any type of spiritual work, you're not doing it with the physical body, you're doing it with your astral body or your energy, one of the other energy bodies, which are composed of dark matter and dark energy. So I talked about technology, but dark matter and dark energy is also what comprises, or what your aura is composed of. Your aura is composed of dark energy and dark matter. That's what creates a person's aura. That's why your aura can be various different colors. One day your aura may be red, the next day it may be purple, the next day it may be blue. It's not a stagnant color. I guess we have a standard color, but it can be influenced. Because dark matter, remember, black is a result of all colors. So if the color black is a result of all colors and your aura changes, that means the stagnant color of your aura is black, because your aura can change into any color. So if your aura can change to any color, that means the dominant color is black. So that means the aura has to be comprised of dark energy and dark matter. Just like that. 110 stars, exactly the 110 fixed stars. I'm like starting somehow to pull my dream world into the current waking world, because they are one and the same. It's all a generation of our mind. It's all consciousness. Once you remove consciousness, you don't exist here. So your inner world and your external world are connected by your consciousness. And consciousness is composed of what? Dark energy and dark matter. That's what consciousness is. Consciousness, dark energy, dark matter. So there really is no separation between your internal and external, because they are connected by consciousness. And that's what we're here to master. We're here to master not our body, not our physical shell, but our astral body, our energy body, our dark energy and our dark matter. Again, that's what we call our Merkaba, or the Merkaba. That is your dark energy and your dark matter, which creates a chariot. The Merkaba or the Merkaba is a chariot which allows you to you can be transmuted or transported. I guess transported would be a better word. You can transport to many dimensions and other realms and other worlds. That's dark energy, that's dark matter. That's the chariot card in the tarot. The chariot card in the tarot is your astral body, is your Merkaba. So that's what that is. So that's why I wanted to integrate everything, because I always been talking about spirituality and all these things, but I wasn't really speaking about politics. I wasn't really speaking about current events. So that's I guess the new angle that I want to integrate into what I'm already doing. So you see, we still going to be talking about astrology, numerology. We're still going to be talking about what we always talk about, but now we're just keeping it up to date with everything that's occurring in the world, everything that's occurring with politics, so that we understand that, oh, it's not just us being affected, it's also the world. We can see how we are affected on a personal level, but we can also see how we are affected on a universal level. Because again, it's one and the same. It's the small reality, then there's the grand reality. Our small reality is also a reflection of the grander reality. What's happening on the world stage is also occurring within us, just to different degrees. And again, that's why we study astrology, so that we can understand the differences of those degrees. Because it all comes down to mathematics, and mathematics have to follow rules. There's a certain method of execution when you're dealing with mathematical problems. You have to follow the rules of execution, or you're going to come to an inaccurate answer if you don't follow the rules. And this is what makes astrology different than any other spiritual system, is because you actually have to follow these rules. Any other spiritual system, people are just freestyling. And sometimes that's actually preferred, when you're able to freestyle, when you don't have to follow a certain set of rules or operate within structures. But when it comes to astrology, it's just all numbers and symbols. You really can't alter the meanings. You can be creative with the meanings, but you really can't alter it. Aquarius is going to always represent what Aquarius represents: technology, the internet, associates, friends, hopes, wishes, aspirations. The 11th house is going to always represent that. It don't matter who comes along. People can add on to it. People can put more to it than what we already know, but it ain't about taking away. And that's what it's about. We're here to add on to what we already know, what the ancestors has already laid down. We're here to add on. We're here to take it to deeper dimensions, more grander dimensions. And this is what we're doing. And this is exactly what we're doing. We're taking it to deeper dimensions, more grander dimensions. So that's why, on this channel, as well as many other people's channel, we say things out of our mouths that have never been said before, even by the ancestors. We have been able to arrive at original conclusions that they didn't arrive at, because they were in a different environment. Not to say that we're better or smarter, but they arrived at conclusions that they needed to arrive at during their times. And we're arriving at conclusions that we need to arrive at during our times, so that we can advance our consciousness. So with that, I bear peace. Definitely will be seeing y'all real soon. 93, 93, 93. We out.